Some people fall asleep the moment their head hits the pillow. No noise, no light, just the hush of an empty room settling into stillness around them. Others reach for the remote before they even lie down. The screen flickers on, familiar voices fill the dark, and only then does the body finally loosen. There is a reason for that, and it changes everything. Everyone else in the house seems to think it is simple. Turn off the screen, they say, close the eyes, and sleep should come as easily as it does for everyone else. As if willpower were the missing ingredient. Sleep articles call it a bad habit, a discipline problem, a screen addiction waiting to be broken. Partners sigh, doctors frown. The advice is always the same. Turn off the television, dim the lights, lie still, and let the body do what bodies are supposed to do. But it rarely works that way. The room goes quiet, and instead of drifting off, the mind seems to switch on, replaying, worrying, circling. Sleep that should come easily simply does not. And here's the strange part. The very people told to embrace silence often sleep worse inside it. That is not a discipline problem. It is a clue, quietly pointing towards something the advice never bothered to ask about. What is really going on runs deeper than habit. For certain minds, silence is not peaceful at all. The moment the room goes quiet, something else rises to fill the space where the noise used to be. Not sound, something louder than sound. Tomorrow's meeting surfaces first, uninvited, followed by a comment from lunch that should not still sting. Then an old conversation replays itself. Unfinished business, small and large, lines up in the dark like it has been waiting all day for this moment. This is not overthinking by choice. It is what an unoccupied mind does when nothing else is asking for its attention. The brain does not go quiet, it goes inward. The television offers a different option, a small stream of sound and light, just engaging enough to interrupt the loop. Not entertainment, interruption. Just enough signal to keep the internal monologue from taking over completely, without asking for real attention in return. It gives the mind somewhere else to rest. Neuroscience research suggests the brain has an idle state, active when nothing external demands focus. Researchers call it the default mode network. It is the same system responsible for daydreaming, for self-reflection, and for a fair amount of quiet rumination. In silence, that system gets louder. A little outside noise, it turns out, can keep that inward spiral from taking the wheel entirely. The screen was never the distraction. It was the thing standing between a tired mind and the noise it makes when left alone. But there is a second layer, and it goes back further than you'd think. For many, this pattern is older than they realize. It began long before bedtime was ever a choice. Back in a childhood room with the lights already off, a parent's show played in the next room. The blue glow slipped under the door, and the muffled voices drifted through the wall like a lullaby with no melody. It did not need to be understood. It only needed to be there, steady and familiar, proof that the rest of the house was still awake and safe. That sound meant safety. It meant someone else was nearby, and the world outside the blankets had not gone anywhere. The adult brain does not forget that. Years later, in a different room, on a different bed, it still reaches for the same kind of anchor. Not the show, the signal behind it. Attachment research describes these as sleep onset associations, formed early and carried quietly into adulthood. A pattern built before language even had a name for it. The blue glow under the childhood door and the television glow across the adult bedroom are doing the same job. They are both saying, "You are not alone here." That is not a flaw in the wiring. It is a memory the body kept long after the mind moved on. The habit was never really about the screen. It was about a feeling learned early, one the nervous system never stopped trying to recreate. Some anchors just last longer than others, and understanding where it came from makes it a little easier to stop calling it a bad habit. The third reason goes even deeper, into something called vulnerability. Falling asleep requires something most people never think about. It requires letting go of control, releasing the grip on awareness and trusting the dark to hold everything steady. For some minds, that release is not simple. A high baseline of anxiety or a nervous system tuned to notice everything makes surrender feel less like rest and more like risk. Vulnerability, even in sleep, has a cost. The mind wants a guarantee that nothing needs its attention before it agrees to stop paying attention altogether. The television offers exactly that guarantee, not as a distraction from sleep, but as a low-stakes companion standing quiet watch while control is slowly released. A transition object, grown up. Research on highly sensitive people describes a nervous system that processes more and needs more support letting go. Elaine Aron called this high sensitivity. For these minds, the world simply registers louder, brighter, and more textured than it does for most people. Falling asleep is its own small risk. The screen becomes a bridge, something familiar and predictable standing between waking awareness and the unknown of sleep. It is not weakness, it is a safety net. The same way a hand on a railing makes a dark staircase feel less uncertain, the glow makes the descent feel safe. Nothing dramatic, just enough to hold on to. And once that small sense of safety is in place, the body finally allows itself to let go. The bridge does its job quietly. It asks for nothing, offers just enough, and disappears the moment it is no longer needed. And the fourth layer is the one that surprises people most. The brain does not actually need silence to sleep. What it needs is something milder, a little unpredictable input to interrupt thoughts that run in straight lines. Straight line thinking keeps the mind awake. A single worry followed logically to its worst conclusion has a way of keeping the whole body alert. Television dialogue rarely follows a straight line. A joke, a scene change, an unrelated commercial, a new voice. None of it connected to what came before. That randomness is not a flaw either. It mimics something the brain already does naturally on its own way into sleep. Fragmented and loosely associative. Sleep researcher Dr. Luke Baudouin calls this the cognitive shuffle, a drifting image-based sequence the mind uses to power down. Unrelated images, one after another, loosely. A boat, a doorway, a stranger's coat. Nothing that needs solving, nothing that connects to anything else. The television does this by accident. Its shifting scenes and drifting dialogue give the mind exactly the kind of loose, unpredictable input it was already reaching for. Not focus, the opposite of focus. A gentle scattering of attention, just organized enough to keep the spiraling thoughts from taking hold. The noise was never fighting the silence. It was doing what a bedtime story once did, guiding a tired mind somewhere soft and unfocused. 4 reasons. One quiet thread running through them. A loud silence, a childhood anchor, a fragile release, and a mind that shuffles its way toward rest. None of it was ever about the television. What comes next changes how all of this should be understood. None of this means the habit needs fixing. It was never laziness, never a lack of discipline, never a problem waiting for the right amount of willpower. These people are not avoiding sleep. They are doing something quieter and more resourceful, building a bridge to get there, night after night. A bridge made of light and low voices. One that interrupts a loud mind, honors an old memory, softens a hard release, and shuffles thoughts into rest. That is not a weaker kind of sleeper. It is a mind more aware of its own noise, more honest about what it actually needs to let go. Awareness like that is not a flaw. It is the quiet skill of knowing exactly what kind of door a person needs before they can finally rest. Some doors close in silence. Others close a little slower, with a soft glow and a familiar voice standing watch until the very end. Both doors lead to the same place. One is not more disciplined than the other. It is simply a different way of crossing the same threshold. The screen was never keeping anyone awake. It was the last quiet companion standing beside a tired mind while it finally let everything go. Not broken, just built with a softer door. And every night, that door opens exactly the way it always has. Quietly, gently, into rest.